Hello and good evening. Welcome to the Spiritual Speakeasy, where the bar is always open and the spirits are always served. Tonight I have a very, very special guest. I met him. We were just discussing how long it's been. About a year ago, I guess this early summer. His name is Art Jackson, and he is a spiritualist. I consider him a shaman. He is a drum maker. He does fire walks. And I will bring him on stage so we can get the party started. Hello, Art. How are you?
I'm just fine, hunky-dory.
Good
to be with you on the Spiritual Speakeasy.
It is so awesome to have you. I'm so humbled. I tip my hat and my heart is full. I met you and your energy is tremendous, and the things you have done and accomplished in life to me is just phenomenal. And I can't even my journey is just really starting to build, and you've done so many things and I'm just wide-eyed about it. So why don't you tell the
I'm
listeners?
an old man, I'm like 73, and it's
you're not 73.
You got to do something with your time, right?
You are not 73. Are you really? Are you really? So you're 10 years. I'm going to be 63 in April. So I mean, that's not that far off. I mean, I'm a late bloomer.
You're having fun. It's really does.
I have had more fun in my retirement than I have had probably in my entire lifetime.
Is it okay if I tell some circumstances about how you and I met?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, it's kind of an interesting story because Julie and I met on Friday evening as we were finishing setting up at the Enchanted, what do you call it?
Metaphysical and Mystics.
Yes, in Benton, Arkansas. And anyway, Julie and her husband Chris came by our booth, and I have some drums that I had up on the behind the booth, and saw them. And yes, she picked out this drum. She says, "I have to have this drum," and I'm going, "Okay, well, you can have it. I mean, that's what they're here for, to sell." And then I'm looking at Julie, and she's got this crow right here on her shoulder that comes up to her neck, and she's got the exact tattoo there that was painted on that drum. So I said, yeah, I would say that is your drum. So then she's looking at the other drums, and she picks up another one and says, "Oh, I got to have this one." I said,
and I had paid for the crow first. I started to walk away, and then that other one was hanging there, and I was like, "What?"
So I pay attention to synchronicities. Synchronicities is kind of what I live for. When I have a synchronicity happen with something, then that's Spirit's way of saying pay attention. So I think Julie and I were meant to be connected. So she got this drum, and she can probably tell you the rest of the story. She went back to her hotel. And,
oh my gosh. So I went back to my hotel, and I had been in the hotel, like I checked in around 3:00 in the afternoon. We had done a setup prior to that. Check-in was like 3 or 4. We went in, threw our shit in, left, went to the show, finished setting up, met you, bought the drums, go back to the hotel. It's 9:00 at night, maybe even 10:00 at night, because I think we went out to eat. And I get in the hotel, and I'm like starting to put my hometown uniform on, my PJs, and I look up, and this is like a Best Western. We stay cheap. Nothing wrong with that. And there's like a little couch area, and then you walk into the bedroom area, and the little couch right above it is like 3 little dandelion pictures. And then we walked into the bedroom, and off the wall, like, here's the bed, and there's like another little set of 3 dandelion pictures, and then here's this big like dandelion picture right there on the wall. And I had been in and out that door like how many times and did not recognize it, but the dandelion pictures matched my dandelion drum perfect.
Yeah, so she showed me that picture of the Saturday at the expo, and I'm going, wow, first the crow, and then the dandelion. You know, when you think you're having a spiritual experience, then I was always taught to look for confirmation. And to have the dandelion happen on top of the crow on the drum was just a double confirmation for me. So,
It was crazy. It
you
wasn't
and
it? It
I
was absolutely crazy.
yeah, whatever you and I are supposed to do together, I do not know, but I'm open to it. So when
I
she
think
said,
there's still more things. Like I think our
yeah,
journey's not over with. Oh,
yeah,
here it
yeah.
is. Okay. So let me see if
There's a
I can.
picture on your phone of the dandelion at the
So
hotel.
here's, I don't know if, gosh, cameras are terrible.
Yeah, yeah, you can see it. Yeah,
So
I can
there's my
see one
drum,
frame of it.
and there's
The exploded one I
the
can't see.
pictures.
It's
There's
there
one
now.
set of
There's the
pictures.
exploded one. Yeah, yeah, it's not like the drum.
There's another picture. It's you can't, the color doesn't show up really well on this,
Oh yeah,
but
there's
it's like
the
the wall is
picture of
super
the drum.
gold, and then the pictures are black and white. But this is the big one. Let's see if I can get it to like rotate. I'm terrible with these cameras. Where the hell is my camera? Okay, there it is. Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of washed out with,
there.
yeah, now you can see it there now. Yeah, that's the best shot there because it's exact. So I didn't paint the pictures on these drums. I think I told you that. I made the drums, but I didn't paint the pictures. I contracted with a lady I met at the Hot Springs Gem and Minerals show last year, and she painted all the drums for me. And so you know, she just showed me a picture of what she'd done, and I give her a big thumbs up on all of them because they were all turning out really nice. But yeah, there's the other one. Yeah. But anyway, drums are fun, you know.
I just want to show off his work because his work is amazing.
Yeah, well,
Blue Dog, still Blue Dog, correct?
yeah, well, I go by Blue Dog. I had a dog named Blue years ago, and that's on my business card. And I got a flea market booth named Blue Dog. And when I set up at expos, I'm Blue Dog. But yeah, Blue joined the rodeo. He kind of got one upped as the alpha dog because we got a bull mastiff, and we were living in Texas, and the trail ride would come by our place on the way to the Houston rodeo, and I was at a sweat lodge at my friend Mary Thunder's place. And when I got back, Blue was gone. And the next year, I saw a picture of the trail ride coming through, and I saw him jumping into a cowboy's covered wagon. He was uniquely marked. So I always say Blue went away and joined the rodeo.
It was his destiny. It was his
Yeah, well, I
destiny.
guess, you know. Yeah.
He's probably having the time of his life too. What a thing to do. Hi,
yeah,
Carol. Carol says hi, Julie and Art. Hi,
horses,
Rebecca.
cowboys, all like that. But yeah, we
Rebecca
do
says,
metaphysical, spiritual things. My wife is an internationally known psychic and healer. Her name's Starr Fuentes. You can probably Google her if you like to. We live here in Hot Springs, Arkansas, in a big 60-foot in diameter geodesic dome. Seats
wow.
250 people. Yeah, we've been here for 18 years. We did a metaphysical church service every Sunday for 15 years of the 18 that we've been here. And when COVID hit, we quit doing the church service. And my wife's 86 now, and we've slowed down quite a bit. We're not doing near as much as what we used to, but we have 2 classes coming up this year. We've got one next month in April. It's called the Underground Dimensions, and it's a 7-day long workshop that's in Mount Ida. A friend of ours has a retreat center there, a lady named Connie Eel. And what's it called? I think it's called the Forest Retreat Center in Mount Ida. Beautiful place. She's got all these tiny houses there, and she's got a teepee, and she has an underground house. And I don't know if you ever saw that movie with Tom Cruise about when the Iran-Contra thing was going on, and Ronald Reagan was funding the Contras by way of selling cocaine. And the cocaine was being flown into Mena, Arkansas, in the nose cap of the prop airplanes. And then it was being sold to buy weapons to fund the Contras, which were, trying to keep basically what they called the communists down in Nicaragua, which was the people, from having their own government. They wanted to put their puppet government in place. So anyway, this is the house where all those weapons were stored and where all that transpired. And Connie bought this house. But it's got a room that's underground. And so my wife teaches dimensions. Jesus said, in my Father's house are many mansions. Well, he could have said dimensions. So this is just one of them that we're experiencing here. But in different dimensions, different things take place. Like the seventh dimension is where you see auras, where you see the energy field around people. The eighth dimension is where you see from now through the past, where you can see people's past lives. And one way to do that for yourself is we do it with partners, where you sit and need of people. You got the lights dimmed, you have some candlelight in the background, and you focus with soft eyes in between yours and your partner's eyes. And you call, the facilitator will be calling in the seventh dimension, where you see the auras, and you'll start seeing a pencil, and then you'll see more as time progresses. And some people are not as visual as others. I myself am a feeler, so I feel things.
Right.
And, you're either you're a feeler, you're auditory, or you're a visionary, or you're just a knower. So you use all of your modalities when you're doing this dimensions thing. But as you call in the eighth dimension, then you watch your eyes of your partner there, and you start seeing these faces shift like this. Maybe they'll come and they'll stay, but most of the time they shift real quick. And the facilitator will say, well, see if you can see who this person was, what body they wore in a past lifetime. And so then you have a time of sharing and so forth. But anyway, this is more of an advanced class of people that have already done this dimensions class before, which dimensions class is only an evening class, doesn't take very long. But this is a week long of dealing with what my wife calls the underground dimensions.
How interesting.
It'll be catered with.
Yeah. That's things I've never heard of before. Like I'm not learned in that type of thing.
Yeah, well, it's kind of second nature to me because it's been so long. The first time I had a reading with my wife, she did dimensions with me, where she sat and I focused on her eyes so that you can experience this thing. And we usually would use the dimensions class when we travel, and we did classes all around the country. And we had a promoter in different places, say like New Orleans, Springfield, Missouri, New York City. Anywhere we were going, we had a promoter. And we do the dimensions class first because it's phenomenal and everybody gets to experience something. And then when they do that, then we'd have the promoter back there signing people up for the rest of the evening classes. And then we do a day long or a weekend long on the weekend, and then she would do readings during the day.
Now, when she does, what kind of readings does she do? Is she tarot or psychic or?
Yeah, she doesn't use cards. She has cards. If people want that, she'll do it. But, she just kind of puts it on automatic pilot, I saw you doing the readings there.
Yeah, I do both.
Your energy reminded me a lot of Starr's energy doing the readings, You had people lined up, I don't know if you had a sign-up sheet, but you were by far the busiest person at that spiritual expo doing readings.
I think I was.
I know
I was wiped out. Wiped out. And the bones for me are just, it's a tool. Like I'm probably like Starr. I haven't met her, but I can walk through, and if somebody, and names are triggers for me. If somebody tells me their birth name, I can go through and see snippets of their whole life. Like the tragedies, the things. I see a lot of abuse in people. I see a lot of trauma. That's like the first thing that comes to me, my guides, because trauma to me causes a lot of the monsters that we make for ourselves and a lot of the negative energy. And so
There
I'm
you
immediately
go.
shown the trauma.
There
And it's
you
like,
go.
okay, this happened to you then, and this and people will go, no, 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 that didn't happen to me. My parents were so cool. And then it comes out, well, my dad yelled a lot. Well, he threw things. Well, he did this, and or my mom or whatever. And then it starts coming out. And it's like, yeah,
Well,
you just thought
there's
that was
so
cool.
many blocks that children put
Yep,
up to protect
sure,
themselves, to shield themselves. And then they make
absolutely,
up stories so that it's all right. And then they
sure,
give them excuses because the parents are these powerful people that you've got no control over. They're the ones feeding you. They're the ones, clothing you. They're the ones you're looking up to. So you can't, I mean, a lot of that filters through therapy or through, when you have realizations later on in
right.
life and compare notes to other people. Luckily, I had a very good childhood. My parents were, they all make mistakes. I mean, they're
Oh,
learning as,
sure.
you know, the first time they ever had kids. I was the oldest one, so they probably made the most mistakes with me.
They
But
loosened up the reins after you because that's what
no
happens
kidding.
too.
No kidding. I was in bed at 7 o'clock at night on school nights. My brother Jerry, who was the third in line, he's staying up at 11 o'clock watching TV with the folks.
Yeah, a lot changes. I know. I had 7 years between my first and second. Man, I was rigid with my first one. I was probably still rigid with my second one, but not near as much. And I too had very loving parents. Like I was very, very lucky. I don't use the word luck very often. I was very gifted by the fact that I had two beautiful parents who loved me more than they loved anything. And
My
that,
wife, on the other hand, was sexually abused from a young age. She was starved as a kid. She would go eat out of the dumpster. She was in downtown Detroit.
oh my
And
gosh.
so she's an authority on getting over sexual abuse because she
Hmm.
experienced it firsthand. But, and I was trained as a psychologist. I was trained as a school psychologist, and I never had the job that I needed the degree for. I worked with juvenile delinquents right out of college at a wilderness camp. So we built our own trees out of pine, and we'd make plans, and we'd skin the tree, and it was ideal for the way I viewed education because education was included in the environment. Kid says, "Oh, there's a creek. I wonder where it goes." I said, "Oh, okay.
We'll
Well,
follow
let's
it.
put on the plans that we take a hike and follow that creek." So we draw up plans in our weekly plans, and then we take a hike. Oh, it goes into the Neches River. Some kid goes, "I wonder where the river goes." Well, do you really want to know? Yeah, everybody wants to know. So, now we got to plan a trip down the river. So you drop all the plans, you have conferences with the group coordinator, and maybe 3 months later, you're on a canoe trip for a week going down
That's
the river.
awesome. How,
Yeah,
but I mean, how cool is that for kids that are going through hard times
yeah.
to
Yeah,
learn to experience nature and trust
a-
themselves and other people?
and for the counselors. I mean,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
years later, I was telling a teacher of mine about this at a meditation group that I attended, and his name was Joel Glick. And anyway, he goes, I'm telling him about all this therapy that we were doing, and then how cool it was, and all this. And he goes, "You know what, Art? Those places are for the counselors anyway."
Well, I worked mental health for probably half my nursing career, forensic mental health, lockdown, children's, adults, teenagers, the whole nine yards. And I think the counselors and the nurses and the people there, a lot of us had as many issues going in as the kids did and the adults did for real.
Oh,
I had a great
yeah,
childhood, but I mean, I'm not going to make any bones about it. I fucked some shit up when I was a teenager and an adult. I took some paths. I saw some things.
yeah.
That's okay
That
though.
was 3 years of doing that. And I'd work for a year, and then I'd take off for 6 months and do something else, and I'd come back and do it for another year. So I did it for 3 years. And at the end of it, I was the assistant director of it. Started out as a counselor with the youngest kids, the 10 and 11-year-old kids. And, they were all messed up. I mean, the kids, and some of them were messed up because of the overlay that adults had put on what they'd done. I had one kid, Ricky, who was probably the best kid there, and he'd killed his father, shot his father in the head with a .22 because he was abusing his mother and he couldn't take it anymore. So he took it into his own hands and shot him in the head while he was asleep.
I mean, you hate to say good for Ricky, but good for Ricky. That's
but,
I mean, what he had to do.
But the whole guilt that a lot of people put on him, and the whole guilt he felt on his own for for having done that, and another boy was burned over 80% of his body, where is a black boy, and where his parents would pour scalding water over him to punish him, And, so these kids had a lot of emotions, and you got 10 of them together in a wilderness setting. Woo! And if you don't keep them busy, they start picking on one another. And then you got problems, and you got to talk them out because you can't go to lunch. You can't go build your tent. You can't do anything if somebody's mad at somebody, because it'll flare up again. But a good part of the therapy was keeping them occupied, keeping them building things, keeping them, having successes, just little successes. But I learned a lot from that, a whole lot. And people would say, "Oh, you got a master's degree in psychology. I bet that really helped you." I said, only 2 classes helped. And one was behavior modification, because you could manipulate things to make it look like natural consequences. So, if y'all are having to fight on the way to lunch, you got to stop and talk it out. Consequently, you miss lunch. So the next time everybody's going, you better not fight now on the way to lunch because we're hungry,
Right,
so
right.
Smooths things out. And the other was wrestling, because if you restrained a kid, you hold on to him, then you document it at the end of the evening, and you're cool. If you ever hit a kid, you're fired.
Oh, well, sure. They don't like that. Do you catch yourself reliving those moments? Did it traumatize you in any way dealing with those kids?
No, but I remember being my father. At one point, one late night, 12 o'clock, they wouldn't settle down. They're running up and down the trails. They had axes, they had knives, they had everything. And you got 10-year-old boys, and you got 13 and 14, then you got 15 and 16-year-old boys. So, if they run away, and, these are emotionally disturbed kids, they run away, they got access to knives, and, this is out in the Davy Crockett National Forest in East Texas. They get a hold of some hunter's gun, or they get a hold of some hunter's Jeep or whatever. So, you kind of had to be on guard. But anyway, my young boys were raising Cain, raising hell, ruckus, whatever you want to call it. And I was trying to settle them down, and I'm yelling at them, trying to get them to settle down. And, they're dispersed. They're running around. I think I had a co-counselor with me, but he was a newbie, and he didn't really know how to help much. And so I heard myself, and I was my father. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I was my father, and I rebelled against my father. My father and I were diametrically opposed on a lot of philosophy and so forth. So I realized that I had internalized my father, and that authority figure was me at that point. And that was a heck of a realization to come to at that time. But,
absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of knowledge. So you've gone from there. You talked about doing the dimensional studies. You've also done firewalking.
Yeah.
How did you get into that?
We were doing a class called Divine Intervention. My wife tells me, and I knew I'd heard she'd done similar things in private tutorings and readings and so forth, but she's a healer, hands-on healer. And her specialty is cancer. And when she was 18 in Ann Arbor, Michigan, going to college, there was a boy there that had a brain tumor. And they were having a party for him. And he was going to have surgery supposedly in the next couple of days. Anyway, she put his hand on him, and she was very empathetic toward him. And when she did, a tumor rolled out on the floor. This squishy thing rolled out on the floor. She jumped up and dropped her drink, and he jumped up, and they're both screaming at the same time, simultaneously. And she ran out the door, and she wanted nothing to do with any kind of healing ever again because it freaked her out. But years later, she started realizing how to channel this energy and how to do this. So she tells me we're going to do this class called Divine Intervention, and we're going to charge $6,401 for it for a month.
Woo!
For a month. And initially it was one weekend a month for a year. So, I pick them up at the airport, people coming in from New York, people coming in from Germany. There were 22 people that started out on that class. So we did a firewalk for these people, and we hired somebody to do it, a guy named John Mazel out of Galveston, Texas. And he had studied under Tony Robbins and Tolly Burkin. Tolly Burkin was the one that brought it to this country. One of the ones. There's another lady, I forget her name. But anyway, we did a firewalk there. That was my first firewalk in 1996, I think, 95 or 96. And then the next year we did that class again, and interesting class because we had a guy there that was videotaped. Every time we're healing, we had people coming in for healings all the time, and they all had cancer. And so we had this guy from New York City named Naldo who wore a pyramid on his head. We called him Old Pyramid Head because he had this metal pyramid he kept on his head because he thought it focused the energy. That's, and pyramids do focus and preserve
Sure
energy.
they do.
But he wore it, and he wore it to the airport. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's just an aside. But he would videotape everything. And so, you'd have a lot of tape where nothing's happening. People got, we got, 10, 12 people with their hands on a person laying on a massage table. And the technique has to do with a particular dimension, the 52nd dimension, and a particular hertz. So, anyway, you learn how to run that, but he videotaped it, and then stuff started happening. Nothing happened for the first 3 months, and people would be flying in. I pick them up at the airport. When's it going to happen, Art? Tell me, when's it going to happen? And I said, all I can tell you is from my background. I come from a meditation background. I come from Paramahansa Yogananda, autobiography of a yogi guy. I studied his lessons for 2 years. I got one every 2 weeks. And what Yogananda said, he said, the road to the infinite is not a circus.
True.
If you're looking for phenomena, just for phenomena's sake, you're going to be very disappointed because it's not going to happen.
A long way.
Your head's got to be in the right place. So we had medical doctor, we had nurse, we had a nurse, we had the head for Touch for Health, we had a Reiki teacher who done, a lot of Reiki. She'd done a lot of Reiki teaching, and we had all kinds of people that wanted to learn this technique from my wife. We had, as a guest teacher, we had a Philippine psychic surgeon come in to show their way they do it, and everybody wanted to be the first to do it, right? Big feather in your cap, be the first to have a tumor drop. Well, Naldo's daughter, who was 18 at the time, and he'd given her the class as a graduation present. She was the first one to experience having a tumor drop out of a person. And we had a DVD that we compiled all of this VHS because there wasn't DVD back then. It was all VHS, and we compiled it. We put it on a DVD, and we used it. It was like we put a 20-minute thing together of all these different tumors and, showing the technique, describing it and so forth that we'd use for a promo in doing this class in consequent years. And then we trained people to do it. You had to take the class a second time as a assistant, and you didn't pay for it a second time, but then you could teach it. And so now around the world, there's probably, probably 30, 40 people teaching it.
Wow.
And, among other things.
I need to learn this.
Oh, but we were talking about firewalk. So
But I still need to learn
somebody do
this.
the firewalk.
No,
So
I need to
after
learn
a
this.
while,
I'd go back. I need to learn this. I
so we
so
had
need. Are we
that's
teaching
more
the
interesting
classes
than the
still?
firewalk to me. But the firewalk never gets boring because the flip side of fear is excitement. If you can walk on fire and not get burned, what other things did you think you could not do that you really can do? That you
Absolutely.
just limited yourself by putting your blinders on,
Oh,
you know? So anyway, I started doing the firewalk because I'm going, shoot, this is my house. I'm running the energy. It ended up, I was holding the space for it anyway. So I started doing them myself and did that. And then it's been my ticket to travel. I've been to Germany a couple of times. I've done them in Spain probably 10 times, in Ibiza, in Lanzarote, Canary Islands. I've done them in Italy. I've done Hawaii, Alaska up on top of a glacier, uh, Portugal, and Japan, and then several states here. I did quite a few in Texas. I've done in Arkansas, Louisiana. Used to do a group of 250 people in Allegan, Michigan. They had a monthly. No. In July, they had a yearly thing. It was for Young Living, the ones with the essential oils, the biggest
yeah.
network marketing thing for essential oils. Anyway, Mary Hardy would have me do one there, and we'd have 250 people there. First year we did it. Out of those 250 people, I think 16 people decided they were going to firewalk. So it's like a carnival experience. You got all these people sitting around, and I got my little group of 16 people building the fire. I like to use cedar because it makes a real fine coal. You don't get them caught in between your toes like you do oak. But you got a big stack, you got 4 big stacks of wood, and then it burns down. And while you're doing it, you're drumming, you're drumming using rattles, blowing a flute, making noise, and you're interacting with the fire. You develop a relationship with the fire. The fire's the teacher. I'm the facilitator. Fire does not care, does not know how many times you fired walk. Once or 100 times makes no difference. You still got to check in with yourself. You got to be focused. It's all about focus and not being distracted. Several things you don't want to do. You don't want to be drunk. You don't want to be stoned. You don't
Oh
want to
God,
be
no.
mad at anybody.
No.
You don't want to be in your ego. You don't want to think about how you're looking on camera. You got to be focused. When you're standing in front of a red hot glowing bed of coals, you get connected to whatever you perceive your higher source to be. You get real connected. And at
It's that
that point,
moment. Like you're living in that moment. You can't do
you're
past.
very much in the moment.
You have
And
to
at
be
that
right
point,
there, tuned in.
it doesn't matter if you walk or not at that point because you just made that connection. That's what I go for. And it's like peeling away of an onion. You go, oh, I've firewalked one time. I don't have to do it again. Well, you don't have to. You got nothing to prove. You didn't have anything to prove the first time.
No. Well, you're not doing it to prove anything. That's not why you're doing it.
But you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised as many times as I've done it, I've made lots of mistakes. You think, okay, yeah, I'm teaching this stuff. But, when you're teaching it, you're distracted because you got all these people to pay attention to. And what you do as a facilitator is you eliminate variables. You want to eliminate, you got your rakes, you got your hose out there. You're mindful of any wind that may be there, anything coming up. You're watching the people. You're seeing if there's negativity, you kind of got to nip it in the bud because it'll catch on to the rest of your group, especially if they haven't ever firewalked before.
Well, like you said, you're holding space. And for those listeners that don't know what that is, depending on what your spirituality is, I mean, if you're craft, you're calling in the watchtowers or the four corners. In yogi or yoga, you may just be calling in your space and calling in positivity and the spirit of the divine to bring love. And and peace to everyone, your neighbors, yourself, your neighbors, your city, or, on and on, the people in the room. It can be anything, but you're holding space. You're keeping it clear, like you said, of the negativity, of the distraction, trying to get people to focus on the here and now, not the fear, but the connection. And you're overseeing all of that as the person that is watching over everybody.
Yeah, and what I'll do before we actually do the fire walk, while the fire's burning down, I'll have them step aside away from the fire, and we'll do a mock fire walk. We'll say, okay, the fire's right here. We're drumming. Okay, everybody has a chance to rake out the coals. We're going to chop them up with the tines of the rake, and then we're going to flatten them down with the shovel. You want them flattened down so no stray coal gets caught in between your toes. I got I got a thing of water over here in case one does. You can step in the water. And so then we demo it. We show them how it's done. You're not running across the coals. You're walking in your power. And there's a few ways to do it. I mean, you can visualize that you're walking on cool green moss if you're a visual person. Or if you're a feeler, you feel the cool green moss, which is pretty easy to do because a lot of times you'll be on a grassy place and the grass will be cool and green. So you've got that. But what I choose, and some people who are visionary, they'll see a path through the coals, and so they'll take that. But no two people are exactly alike. But what I like to do is take a point across the way, if there's a light across the way I can see, or if it happens to be a full moon, and I'll just focus on that. I'm not looking down at the fire at my feet, but I'll focus on that and then walk. But people say, how do you know when to walk? And I'll say, well, for me, it's like, how do you not walk? The energy's so high right now. You're going to waste this good fire. You're going to waste this good opportunity when the energy, you have to do something because the energy is so friggin' high. And
oh yeah, I can imagine the vibration is so elevated and everything is just.
And you talk about bringing a collection of people together to make them a group. I've never seen anything that works any better. If you're doing a week-long or a month-long seminar, one way to get them to pull together to be cohesive is to do a fire walk, because they just went through something that I don't know what percentage of the population of the earth has ever done. I don't imagine it's a very great percentage, but you've just joined. And when somebody walks across the fire, everybody gives them acknowledgement. You're not just concerned about yourself. You're acknowledging that somebody just did something, that they broke through. It's like breaking through a wall. It's breaking through a barrier.
Sure it is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What a tremendous thing.
At the end of it, I usually close with a little saying, and I say, you just did a controlled fire walk, but the real fire walk's out there in the real world. When you're confronted by someone who doesn't like you or wants to do you harm or wants to downgrade you, or if you're feeling like you're nothing, think back. You walked on fire. You overcame that fear. What other things did you think you couldn't do that you can do? You're a fire walker now. You can do anything you choose to do. So we have fun with it. I like to keep it light, and for me, I don't want the center of attention to be on me. Of course, we all like the limelight as teachers, sure. A certain amount of it, but end all and be all, you want to empower the people that you're teaching. You want them to get turned on to their own power.
Absolutely.
Like my teacher Red Eagle said, once I get you to have your own connection to your own higher source, your own higher self, then you don't need me anymore. You really don't need me anymore because you got your own connection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's good to have reinforcement, to meet in a group, and it's good to have somebody who's already walked the path ahead of you, i.e. a guru, although spell it out, Guru. You're the only guru you will ever have.
Yes. Yes.
But it's it's your own power. And so many people are so willing to give away their own
Oh,
power.
well,
Sure,
so
you
many
want
people
to get,
don't know they have power. How many
yeah,
people don't even understand? Like, that's part of my reading. One of the things that I say, and guys, I'm watching your comments, and I promise you, I'm going to catch up on them. Um, when I do readings, I do hoodoo type bone readings, and there's a key in there. And I'll tell people, look, the key is you've got the key. You just have to, you've always had the key. You just have to grab
exactly.
hold of it and use it. You've had the power all along to open a door, or to close a door or do whatever you need to
Yeah,
do. I
yeah.
just give you
And
permission to do it because you forgot that you were able to do
you
that.
forgot you had permission, and
Yeah,
you forgot who you are. And that's
yeah.
what it is. It's all a remembering.
And
You know,
that's
it's
what
a
I do with my
remembering.
readings. And that's why I tell people they're so darn harsh, is because I have to wake you up. My job is to wake you up and remind you of what you are supposed to be or what you started out being that you forgot.
Yeah, yeah.
You lost your way through the trauma or through whatever the monsters that you created that or someone else created that you blew into huge things.
But our educational system has basically made us pretty lazy. You
Yes.
know, we're used to being hand-fed stuff. Okay, here,
Oh my gosh.
memorize this. This is going to be on your test at the end of the week. Instead of, okay, be creative. If you look out the window in school, you know, you're going to get labeled ADD or something, and they'll put you on Ritalin or whatever nowadays. But, uh,
Or
you
you're
know,
autistic, which
but,
aren't we all?
we,
I mean, shit.
so you gotta unlearn a lot of stuff that you learned, in order to get at your own higher understanding and stuff.
Yes.
And whatever method you use is particular to you. I get into a trance when I'm making these drums. That's why I do it. I don't do it. It's nice to sell one every once in a while, but it's what's so cool is that when I'm making a drum, I'll sage everything first. I sage myself, and it puts me in a certain state, a certain meditative state. And then I'll get up at 4 o'clock in the morning when nobody's up, and then I'll punch the hole. You soak the rawhide overnight to get it pliable, and I've already polyurethane the frame of the drum. But you punch the holes, and then you start pulling it. You lace it, and as you do it, you got to be aware. You got to be conscious of what the leather's doing, of how it's stretching, and if everything's even, and smoothing it out as you do it. And then you gotta it's called pulling a drum. And then you go around 3 or 4 times to get it tight. And then once you got it there, then you put it outside and let it in the shade and just let it cure. And then you've created something, and then that drum can channel that energy, not only the energy of the maker, but the energy of the drummer when you're doing it. And
Oh
you
my
can use
gosh.
those drums in a healing. You get them up in somebody's aura and beat around, go in their chakras and
I've
get
had
on their
some
feet.
shit jump. Let me tell you, on my table in my house, I have had some wild shit jump. I'm working on somebody and I'm holding space and I can't get it, and I can't, because I'm a Reiki master and I'm working with the energy, and and I'm one of the few in my area that I will work on what I hate the word. I hate the word. I just call it negative masses. Everybody wants to call everything demonic right now, right? Like, that's the whole thing. Everything's demonic.
They don't give me
Okay.
more power than they deserve,
Right, right. But the,
Yeah.
the little created monsters that we take on every day and they build up to be huge. I call them little glitchy thingies, and then like people make monsters out of them. Anyway, you're pulling this shit off of people because somebody got to somebody a week ago, and they've built it into something big, and really it had nothing to do with them, but they've stewed on it all week. I've been drumming trying to get that stuff out of them, and you can just like all of a sudden you just kind of like the energy shifts and you like, whoo, and the person will go,
Yeah, you can feel when it releases,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That you get dizzy, like the whole energy, just like there's a wave and then it's gone. It's crazy.
That's so cool. And
I love it.
Yeah, the healer gets a healing whenever the
This
healing
baby,
gets a healing.
this baby. does it.
Yeah,
The other one is my cleanup. This one is the one that does it. It does it every time. It does it.
And
I love it.
there's so many different tools you can use, and the reality is you don't really need the tools. The tools are for the client, basically.
Right.
Because they want to feel something's happening, and whatever gets them to that place, well, great. Whatever you want to use. You want to use tuning forks, use tuning forks. You want to use a crystal. I love crystals, but that's a whole nother podcast right there.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that too, because I put rocks on people. They'll be like out, and I've got copper divining rods, and they're pure copper, and they're wrapped in copper, and then what's threaded, they're turquoise that are threaded around the copper. So, and I work a lot with turquoise. It's just one of my favorite things. And I will start out, I have a weird pattern, and I don't know why I do this. Well, I do know why. My guide told me to do it. That's why I do it. But I'll turn like, one of them will start with, the divining rod. So the handle will go this way, and then it'll come. And then the other one will go this way, and it'll come down. And what happens every time something's released, and I have photographed this because I'm also a paranormal investigator. So I'll have cameras up, and I'm always watching like infrareds, like is there a heat signature that's coming off somebody, or I read the smoke as I blow the smoke and that kind of thing. Inevitably, every time there's a release and the person has never moved, my divining rods will completely cross into an X in the center of their solar plexus every single time. And I know that now. Like, I've learned that when I put them there on somebody that really needs it, they will cross when I'm done.
Wow.
That's a release.
That's so
And
cool.
I just found that out like a month ago. Like, I'm like, my spirit said,
I know.
Hey, you need to do this. Okay, always learning. Let me catch up on some comments real quick, because I've got a lot of them. Clear back to 910. Rebecca says, cool looking drums. I like drums like that. Very, very cool creative work. They do great work, Rebecca. If you need a drum, Blue Dog. Greg Koss says, sorry, I'm late. Hi, Julie. Hi, Art. Greg, it's not 50-second meditation. It's the 50-second dimension. Correct?
50-second
dimension.
Yeah. 50-second dimension is where the psychic surgery happens.
Yep.
Yeah.
And our guides, like our spirit guides, we call in our spirit guides to give us the messages and talk to us. He also says, boy, that first step, referring to the fire walk that you were talking about, taking that very first step.
Oh yeah, you want all your help there,
Yeah, you do. Becky says, I continue to go through that each day and press on each day, trauma and stress. Hi, Julie. Hi, Art. So there we caught up. Sorry. Like, we get in conversation and it's hard to just stop to do the comments, but I have to say too, if you're liking the podcast, smash the like button, join, subscribe, Supernatural Inc. Art, what do you have coming up? What you said, you referred to something. What do you have that people can?
We're doing the UFO conference in Eureka Springs. Anybody ever been to that?
Love Eureka Springs.
Eureka Springs, beautiful little town, magical town. But the UFO show and conference there has been going on since, for 30, I think this is the 33rd annual or 34th. I'm not quite sure which. But Dolores Cannon was one of the founders of that. And I don't know if you're familiar with her or not, but she's from Arkansas. And she would do past life regressions and readings, and it had several books out. We had her, one of those divine intervention classes we had her as a guest speaker back in about 97 or so, 1997. But anyway, my buddy Richard Tucker and I will be setting up the Blue Dog booth there, and we'll have crystals and various semi-precious gems and minerals. I got Native American jewelry. I, of course, will have my drums, and I've got all kinds of little interesting things to purchase and whatever. But it's not all about selling stuff. It's all about the people you meet and the connections you make. But
absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely. Greg wants to know, where is Eureka Springs? It's in Arkansas.
Yeah, northern Arkansas, close to Fayetteville. I'm in Hot Springs, so it's about a 4-hour drive from here, but a beautiful drive. You go up to Russellville and then cut over on 40, and then I think I don't know what it is, 36 or something like that. It's called the Pig Trail. Winds around. I mean, the most windy road I've ever been on in my life goes into Eureka.
It's
But
beautiful, though.
magical
Oh my
little town.
gosh. I love Eureka. We hung out. We had a show in Eureka Springs. It was not the geez, I just drew a blank. The
Enchanted.
metaphysical, it was not the metaphysical and mystic show. It was way back when Kansas City Spirit and Paranormal was around, and we went down there to do a show, and we ended up hanging out and eating and drinking at a little biker bar in a corner, and people were doing karaoke, and it was like so much fun. We spent hours.
There's a lot of nice restaurants there. The locals are really, really cool, and a lot of artsy, craftsy people there.
It's a real artsy community and little shops all over. So when is that weekend that you're going to be there?
That is, let's see, UFO is April 11th through the 13th at the end of the Ozarks.
Okay. So at the end of the Ozarks, if you want to text that to me when we're done, DM that and I'll get it on the loop so people can see that. So that is
a blast. I mean, if you like watching the Ancient Alien show on TV, if you've ever watched that, sometimes they had Von Donigan there a couple years ago, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, the guy that wrote the Chariot of the Gods back in the early 70s.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. He was there, but they have a lot of speakers, and I don't usually go see the speakers because I'm downstairs with the vendors. So what happens, it's a weird setup for the vendors because people don't come down until after the speakers are done with their class. But last year, one of the speakers was talking about Moldavite, and I happened to have a good stash of Moldavite. So as soon as he got through talking, there was a line about 10 people deep wanting to buy Moldavite, which was nice. But
you speak about UFOs. I have a friend, Rupert Guy. I don't know if you've ever met him. I believe he's from the UK. He has settled down in the state of California, but he travels all over, tours all over the United States, doing talks and he's changed the name now because of the government. He used to call it a CE5 group, and I guess they came after him, and it's a whole. It's a whole thing. You can't even you imagine, because you've probably been there, but there's a lot of paranoia, and the government starts watching you, and it's not a cool thing. But he would take groups out and do contact with aliens, upper dimensional beings, other dimensional.
There's different schools of thought on that. And to me, I never felt any negativity from what I considered UFO experiences. I mean, He didn't either. He found a lot of love. His whole thing was come in peace, and we are here to greet you in peace. Yeah, even ascended masters. Some of these UFOs are as big as a football field or several football fields. And they're interdimensional craft. So, people think, okay, well, they can go really fast. Well, not only that, they can jump dimensions. That's why they're here and they're gone. They're just boom right there. They're just here and gone because they're interdimensional. But I used to belong to this group called Mark Age. I had a teacher named Red Eagle. He was an Indian medicine man, half breed for 18 years. I was at his meditation group every Wednesday night for 18 years. We'd sit down at 7:00 in the evening. And if I was out of town, I'd sit down wherever I was to tune in with the group. And, we do things with local people. We do healings on people and so forth too. But we always had this meditation. And it was interesting because Red Eagle had been with Timothy Leary and Dick Alpert, Alan Watts, Art in the Castelia Foundation when LSD was legal, when Harvard, they were up in upstate New York, Milford, New York, and it was legal. And, they'd take the LSD and they'd go on a trip. You were guaranteed an out-of-the-body experience whenever you took LSD. That's why it was called a trip. You would leave your body. So anyway, that all came to a big halt when they made it illegal. But he said about 60% of the people benefited and about 40% did not. Because imagine you're out of your body, you can see all 360 degrees, you can imagine where you want to be, and you're there.
Oh,
And so you're thinking, okay, I'd love to stay in this place. I got this body down here. How am I going to stay in this place? Well, I can do in the body. So Art Linkletter's son jumps out of a third-story window and commits suicide
yeah,
while he's
that was
high on
tragic.
LSD. You know, he did in the body so he could stay in the astral plane where he was, you know. But they all wanted to turn everybody on because they thought they could elevate human consciousness, you know, by, you know, what would take evolution several thousand years to do, you know, but, you know, you can get there by meditation. When you're
Sure.
reliant on a substance to get somewhere, it becomes a crutch. It becomes, you know, I know people that do ayahuasca. I know people that lead ayahuasca ceremonies in
Hmm.
Brazil.
Hmm.
And I know people that have gone down there and they've done it and done it and done it. But the plant, from what I understand, from
The
what I
plant
can,
will regulate you. It will back you off.
the plant becomes the master. You know what I mean? You cease to be the master and the plant's the master. So I'm all for it if you do it as a way to see what's available. And then you
Yes.
go through the meditation, which is the tried and true way, and which is going to carry over from this life to the next,
Hmm.
you know. But for a way to know that, okay, this is there, this is available, it's a great eye opener. But you
Right.
got to be careful. I mean, you know, drugs are a trap. I mean, no matter what they are. But
Absolutely, they are. And they open gateways to things that you may not want opened.
exactly.
You
It's
know,
a
like
way.
I've done psilocybin and I'm very careful. I do it under ceremony. I have a total respect for it. It's not done every day. It's not done every month. It's done when I feel like I need to tune in at a different frequency at a different time. But
Yeah.
then I go back and I have to process those and I meditate on that information
That's
and
the
I
thing. I
you
mean,
have to
you
you have
become
to tie in. You can't just like trip, 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 trip. I mean,
no,
you can.
because then
That's an option, but
you
that's
get
not
so spiritually minded, you're no earthly good. You
right.
know, if you ever known anybody like that, they're so spiritually minded, they're no earthly good. They can't function on the earth plane anymore because they're too far out in space.
Oh shit,
Yeah,
they've done lost it. They're floating.
yeah,
Major Tom
exactly.
to ground control.
Yeah, Major Tom.
You know, but you know, I have seen the mothership, and I've been, you know, in where my soul's locked in and my body's down here, and I've talked to the ascended masters and learned some tremendous things, and then had to sit for 6 8 months
To
processing
integrate,
that because
to
whoa, like
digest.
you can't go back and unsee that. It's everything that you've been taught is a lie.
Yeah.
Everything you've been taught is a lie, and then you have to process where do you start and where do you finish and
Yeah,
what
but
is
you can
real
throw
and what
yourself off balance. They call it being off balance or losing your balance.
mm-hmm.
And they say that the spiritual path is like a razor's edge. And like to quote Jesus, he said it's like going through the eye of a needle, like a camel going through the eye of a needle. You know, if you're a rich man to get to the kingdom of heaven, you got to stay focused. Your
Yes.
spiritual life has to be the most important thing to you. Sure, you got all these other things in the earthly plane that are distractions. You got romance, you got uh, cars, you got whatever sensual pleasures there are with these five senses that we're so in tune to, these five gross senses. But there's finer senses that can be developed as well. And
Mm-hmm.
we were trapped here. We're spirits having a physical experience.
Yes.
And we were trapped here. We came here to experience this stuff, and we stayed here, and we were so attracted to our senses that we stayed here. And so it's been incarnation after incarnation trying to get back to where, we have the freedom, where we're spirits, where we can enter into a body in some plane or some planet, and
Yeah,
we
we
can
don't have to
experience
stay
that.
here. We don't have to stay in this plane in this existence.
But there's this karma that's been set into motion. there's these action reaction things. This is third dimension. It's an action reaction planet. So, you can count on it. You step onto a boat, and when you step onto it, there's going to be a reaction. You throw a pebble into the water, you're going to see a reaction. So if you do good deeds, you're going to get it back. And not necessarily from the source that you gave it to. Everybody expects, okay, I gave this person this, this, and this, and they don't give a shit. They don't care. They're not giving me anything back. It don't work that way.
Nope.
It's going to come to you from left field. Somebody where you don't even expect it is going to give you the reward. In
yoga, the yogis teach you, the gurus teach you, we should remain unattached to anything. We should not attach ourselves to anything. We become so desireful, and what we desire, let me rephrase that. What we think we desire is not reality. We have to first have discernment and know what is real and what isn't real. What is a travel?
Desires actually lead you. They lead you into the place where you're going to get your lesson one way or the other.
Yep. Desireless is the place to be, except for to move higher.
But people, I'm talking about myself too, because you're sitting here meditating and you're going, okay, I'm going to turn off the thought. I'm going to turn off. And then you have another thought. Then you have another thought. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. You notice the thought, and then you come back to your focus. You're focusing on your third eye. You're watching your breath go in and out. You just keep coming back. You keep pulling it back like a wayward child. The mind isn't the driver. The mind's the horse, and you're the driver. The soul's the driver of it. And we come to realize that we're not this body. We're not this flesh and bones that we've identified with. When you go to sleep, do you still have the same visual of your body the way it is? Maybe not. When you're asleep, you're doing all these different things. You sometimes you'll have this experience where you're astrally traveling, and you'll wake up with a jerk like this, that you're being pulled right back into the medulla here, what the yogis call the mouth of God. You're being pulled right back into this part right here, and you'll jerk, when you come back into your body. So we all astrally travel when we're sleeping, but to do it consciously when you're meditating is a different deal.
Right. There's so much that we don't know or we have forgotten, and gosh.
But it's the ritual that you have. It's the discipline that you have of doing something as a practice. When you get up in the morning, have your tea, have your coffee, and then read something spiritual, then do your yoga exercises or whatever you do to stretch out, and then sit down and meditate before the world rushes in, before the phone starts ringing, before you get distracted with a myriad of other things.
Oh my gosh,
yes. You do it day after day after day after day, when you're home, when you're traveling, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's something that happens over a period of time. It's like building something, and then one day you go, oh shit, look where I just went. Just look where I went in this meditation. Look at the marvelous things that are happening to me. And if you give 25% of your energy to finding God, then the higher ascended masters, your guides, they'll do Jesus, the saints, they'll all do the other 75% to make sure you get there.
Sure they will.
But you got to put out your 25%, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it is.
It is. And remembering that, for me, like I lost that, you and I, before we came on screen, you asked me how my knee was. And that was probably the worst part of the knee. Like pain. Yeah. Every night it's pain. It starts at 5, just like sickness, when the sun starts going down, people start getting weird, like if you have a child that's sick, in the evening, it's always worse. Nighttime is always harder. The darkness always brings forth a lot of weird things. Not weird to probably us, but if you work in a hospital or with people, things get a little strange at night.
We had the
But
full moon too. Don't forget the full moon.
we had the full moon, we had the eclipse, we had the 7 planets or the 7 things line up. It's been a whole, and then we've had storms that moved through that were like killer, literally. I mean, it's just been horrendous, and earthquakes. I sat in that period and I lost myself. And I think that was the worst part, was like, I didn't have my routine. I was not in a good headspace. And like you said, drugs, medications, that shit will mess you up. It takes you to a whole nother plane, whole nother area. And the negative talk starts, and the negative start, it's there. It's that gateway to the negative.
Yeah. You got to head it off. You got to, at that point.
I didn't. I sat for 3 months in it, and I was in a dark place for 3 months, but I pulled out. Like my spirits came, and my husband rallied. Like my husband's, you met Chris. Chris is just a godsend. He's like my heart and soul. And, every day he was there for me, and we pulled through it and cleaned up and got out. And I'm not going back in that hole anymore. Lesson learned.
Woo. They call it the dark night of the soul, and there's degrees of it, and different times you go through it. And then on the other side of it, you need the dark and you need the light. There's a contrast, and you can't have one without the other.
And I think you forget, and sometimes you get sent back. Like, I think there were things that I needed to remember about myself, and I had to spend that time there, because when I came out so much better than I was before I went in. Like, there were things that I had forgotten I could do. There were things that I didn't know I could do. There were things that I didn't know I could talk. Like, it was a whole opening up thing. So I had to sit in that dark place to learn kind of about my past that I had forgotten.
And, people are praying, give me this, and wanting God to do it all. Well, you got to put forth the effort too.
Oh, shit, yeah, you do.
Yeah. A simple little thing is to do affirmations. Make up some affirmation, or get Yogananda's scientific healing affirmations, which I've given out so many copies of it. It's like $1.98 book, but he's got all these healing affirmations. And you use your subconscious mind right before you go to bed. You're going into the subconscious. You're going out of the conscious into the subconscious. So right then you're going to repeat, okay, every day in every way, I'm becoming more and more of my true self. Okay, simple little thing. Okay, say it out loud, and then say it in a softer voice. Every day in every way, I'm becoming more and more myself. And then just whisper it. Every day in every way, I'm becoming more and more myself. And then go to sleep. The subconscious just got impressed with that affirmation. Then when you wake up in the morning, you're coming out of the subconscious into the conscious. Immediately do your affirmation then, the most powerful time. It's just like, the twilight when the sun's setting is a very powerful time.
Yes, and it is.
The morning when the sun's rising is another very important, powerful time. Both good times to do affirmations, to do meditations. But be relentless with it. I mean, if you have to get over something, I remember a breakup years and years ago, 40 years ago, maybe longer, a breakup with a woman. And, I was torn apart. So I started with affirmations, and, a week of doing it and I was fine, but I was pretty messed up before I started the affirmation.
It's a slippery slope too, because you catch yourself going down. And you're like, okay, it's just this and this and this. And you make excuses for it. And then pretty soon you're so low, like it's really hard to pull yourself up. And then the pity rolls in. It's like, why me? I can't do this anymore. Like, it's all negative. And you just sit there and you've got people rooting for you. But like you said, if you're not willing to do the work.
And a lot of times we like to wallow in it.
Oh God,
yeah. Because you want everybody to come in there with you, see how bad it is.
Oh my gosh.
Confirm for me that it's as bad as I think it is.
Oh, Lord. I don't want to do that again. I want to be happy. I want to be peaceful, and I want to be happy, and I want to be joyful. And I am now. Like, my knee hurts, but you know what? I'm going to have aches and pains, whatever. I try to think about, like, that's no different than, needing to pop your thumb, or needing to pop your neck or something. Something's just a little out of kilter. It's going to get back in. It's going to be fine.
A lot of times you ask it, what have you got to teach me? What, dealing with cancer people, what does the cancer have to teach you? When you're talking about cancer, think about it. If you break it down the syllables, yes, I can, sir. Yes, I can, sir. So a lot of times what we found is that people have cancer or people that can't say no. They don't have a firm boundary. They don't have a firm no. If somebody will ask them to do something and they really don't want to do it, but they capitulate and they do it anyway because they're that kind of person. They'll do anything for you, but they don't have boundaries. They let people walk over their boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's interesting. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's kind of the point I was making. But cancer has something to teach you. So everybody you want to fight cancer. Well, why not ask it, what have you got to teach me so that you can leave, and sit down and think about it, write down some things. Well, what am I learning from this? What has cancer got to teach me? What was I doing that gave me this condition?
Yeah.
Whether it all originates in your thought. Everybody thinks it's diet. Well, yes, it is your diet.
But it's also anger. It's anger and it's anxiety
right
and
here. They originate in your head, and change your thinking, and you can change your life. Yogananda and his guru Yukteswar said that, if you're ill, don't give it a whole lot of attention because an unwanted guest will leave.
My son does that. My son has, and I think I've told this story. I may not have told this story on the podcast. My son is 34, going to be 35. And he had, I want to say it was 2018, he was diagnosed with liver duct cancer. And it was end-stage cirrhosis of the liver. And it was a very traumatic thing. He had what we thought was like a hernia in his solar plexus from construction. And he partied hard. That's all I'm going to say. He partied hard. He was young. He partied hard. Went to the doctor, had insurance, finally got insurance, and he was diagnosed with, we got a phone call and it was like, you have end-stage cirrhosis of the liver. How hard have you been drugging and drinking? And he did. Not as hard as a lot of people. He did. That day he threw away cigarettes, alcohol, and any recreational drugs that he was doing. And they gave him 3 months to live. And it was a very rare cancer. It's a rare women's lung cancer that somehow developed in the blood ducts of his liver. And they gave him 3 months. And a year and a half, almost 2 years later, he had a liver transplant. And this is a very quick, bizarre story. They put in the wrong liver. When they harvested the body, and liver's the only forgiving organ, but when they harvested the body, almost all, I believe all the organs went to this particular hospital, which will remain unmentioned. There was no secondary type and cross match done. It was done at the donating facility. It was done incorrectly because the person had bled out and they had typed and cross matched after the entire blood bank had been emptied into them. So the type and cross match was incorrect. So rather than biopsying the liver to find out exactly what the type was, as well as the other organs, they all skipped that step. The heart transplant receiver died. The kidney person failed. The lung person went into shock. My son was the survivor. And he survived. We almost didn't survive. We had shock a couple times because they had to do plasmapheresis, which is where they pull like all the plasma out of your body and run a different person's plasma in, because it was the wrong liver. And he went into anaphylaxis once with that. So we had a lot of traumatic things that happened off and on with that. He now has cancer again in that particular organ. And they found out that it has to do with a fluke in one of his DNA strands. It was just a fracture. And when the DNA strand communicates, it tells the other part of the strand to make these cells. But it's kind of like a patch. It's receiving. So it's trying to patch the defect, and the defect happens to be to make these weird cancer cells in the ducts of the liver. So his spleen is 3 times larger than it should be. And he's got this cancer, and he's been on trial drugs. We just came off a trial drug in Houston, which was, I don't know, they said successful. It held its own. He is currently doing what he's doing I'm gonna say it that way so that there's no interference from anyone else. He's doing what he's doing. He does jiu-jitsu. He competes. He does not talk about feeling bad. Even when he's feeling bad, it's I'm fine, I'm great, I'm healthy, I'm alive. It's mind over matter. He goes to the gym every day. If he doesn't work out because he's having one of those days, he at least gets on the mat and he stretches and he works with the other guys.
Yeah.
He refuses to use the word sick.
Yeah. I think he's wise.
He doesn't speak the word cancer. He doesn't. There are certain words that he will not use. We use crystal mats. We use a salt. I have a salt sweat room. We have the crystal mats and the crystal lights and the red light therapies. And we do a lot of things like that. But, comes off sugar, comes off seed oils.
I was going to say no sugar.
No sugar. He struggles with that one. Like if there's a package,
everybody does.
If there's Chips Ahoy around, he'll come to my house and he'll be like, "Mama, why do you have Chips Ahoy around?" Because I'm a Chips Ahoy and mega stuffed Oreo cookie junkie, and he'll steal some. But at his house, it's
even fruit juice, even orange juice, even carrot juice. You're looking at sugars,
Absolutely. Doesn't do any seed oil. Doesn't do he has completely abolished seed oils from his house. Doesn't cook with that. He uses a lot of coconut oil and uses a lot of things like that. But it's mind over matter.
Yeah, it's all in the thinking.
Says, thank God I'm healed every day. Thank God I'm healed every day. And that's his mantra is, I'm healed. What are you talking about? I'm healed.
There you go. Because you're already there. Visualize yourself already there.
And he does that with any injury that he comes up with. Yeah, it hurts. But we're not going to talk about the hurt. My knee is fine. My elbow's fine. My wrist is fine. I'm great. And we move on. Because if you give it attention and you speak it, then you've just drawn it in.
Yeah.
So it's mind over matter.
Yeah, well, I wish him the best and hope he keeps on doing what he's doing. And, it helps when other people hold that visualization for someone as well. In our meditation group that we used to have on Wednesday nights, we'd have requests, people need this. And if you knew that person, then you could see them better because you already knew what they look like, and you visualize it. I remember one time a friend of mine, Sonia, was pregnant. And she was getting ready to have her baby, and the baby presented breech.
Oh,
and so we're there at the meditation group, and she's telling the group this. I guess there's about 20 people there, and this is, let's see, how old am I now? This is 40 years ago. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, she's sitting there in the middle, and she told us, and some of my teacher Red Eagle says, "Okay, we're all going to visualize that fetus there, and we're all going to give it a push." Clockwise. We're visualize your hand on that baby's butt, and we're going to give it a push clockwise. And so we're meditating, we go through our thing. We got Tibetan bells. We sing 3 ohms. We say the Lord's Prayer, and we're off into the meditation. Well, the first part of the meditation is doing this visualization of giving this baby a push. And so I had to open my eyes. Sonia's a good friend of mine. She was my girlfriend at the time's best friend. So I open my eyes just to see what's going on, if there's any. And Sonia's over there, her eyes are wide, and she's got her hands on her stomach, and she's feeling it,
Oh, wow.
And, yeah. So anyway, she goes in the next day, and sure enough, the baby's turned around head first. So, the more power you got, and from what I understand, from channeled information, it didn't all happen 2,000 years ago when Jesus was here. We still got prophets alive today. Miracles are still happening today.
Yes, they are.
Even a greater basis, because like he said, when I go to the Father, you'll do things like I did, and greater things you'll do. Just ask it and we'll do it. So anyway, supposedly through channeled information, I'm not sure who the channel was, but the time the earth glowed the best, the goldest, was when the astronauts were circling the moon, and there was a malfunction with the spacecraft, and we didn't know if we were going to get them back or not. I don't know when. This was the early 70s, I think it was. But so everybody in the world was praying for it. They were all praying that the astronauts would get back home.
And it
And
showed up.
supposedly from the higher beings that could see it, that the earth was glowing gold because of all these people. And the best time to do a spiritual thing is either Christmas or Easter or Ramadan or whenever you have all these people focusing with a spiritual intent. So if you want to make great spiritual progress, put a lot of effort in there before Christmas. Put a lot of effort there in Lent before Easter.
That's true.
That's why we have those things, but everybody's focusing their intent, their energy, because thoughts are things.
And thoughts manifest.
Exactly.
Good and bad thoughts manifest.
Yeah.
This has been so wonderful and so enlightening. Thank you so much. We are 22 minutes over. I do this. It doesn't matter because it's, there's nobody after me, which is why I chose this time, because oftentimes we get going and we just talk and talk. Art, my heart is full. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, mine too. And, I knew there was a special connection. And when you were in Conway, I thought about coming back up there to go. I'd just been there the week before, you were doing the Enchanted. I did the Bella Rustina antique show there, but, it didn't happen. But I'm sure our paths will cross again.
We're going to be at Enchanted the 28th and 27th, 28th and 29th, or 28th, 29th. It's that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Hi, Carol. Conway. Yeah, we're going to be in Conway this month. At the end of the month, that weekend. It's a meet and greet on Friday night, and then Saturday and Sunday, full on. Hit the floor running.
Yeah, sounds good.
And I do want a bass drum. I need a really big bass drum from you.
If you hear the word try before something, it ain't going to happen. I'll be there, okay?
Okay, I will. Okay. I look forward to it. And if you have a bass drum, bring it, because I'll buy it.
Bass drum?
A real low, like subsonic low.
Well, all I have is these 18-inch in diameter ones, but I've got about 5 more to make. I'm going to start making them here again pretty soon as the weather's warming up.
Yep.
But I may have to order one that's a little bigger to get the bass sound that you're after.
Yeah, I am finding out that I have so many people that need that shock or that low vibration released. And I'm just thinking subsonic, like that boom is going to do
it. I may have to get my girl that paints for me. I may have to call her again and let her channel whatever she's going to channel onto the next set of drums,
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. Blue Dog Drums. Art Jackson is who I'm speaking to tonight. You can check him out on his webpage and Blue Dog. Oh, look. And for those that didn't see, that tuned in late, because I have some people that like have other things going on, other podcasts and stuff. This is one. I didn't bring my mallet, but
they each are different. Everything's just like snowflakes. They got a different personality, different characteristics.
Got one more I'll show you, because for those of you that missed it.
Yeah, that's the one that matches your tattoo.
Yep, I love that one.
Yeah, the crows come visit me every day right across our driveway here. I put stuff out for them, and they come every day and they caw and let their buddies know that there's something there.
We had 2 bald eagles playing above our house today. Cool. We had ice probably about a month ago. We had ice and snow here in Missouri, and it bent. We had so much, and the ice with the snow was so heavy it bent my gutter down. So my husband was up on a ladder, like trying to screw the gutter back in because it dipped. And he comes inside and he goes, "You got to come out here. You got to come out here right now." So like I'm hobbling out there, and I get out there, and there's 2 bald eagles that are just like, they're just playing, like they're just, it's like a whole thing. And they danced and they flew. It was absolutely gorgeous. And then they flew off to the river which is just like 2 blocks over. So it was beautiful. It was
be sure and tell Chris hello for me.
I will. Again, such a pleasure. You guys, thank you for joining us. Hit that smash button and like. Go to Art's page, like him, Blue Dog, and we will see you again next Sunday night. And I thank you so much, Art. I'm going to bring you down and turn off the show.
Okay, I enjoyed it.